Okay, working. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nayaswami Devarshi. I think I know most or all of you here, and nice to be here having satsang with you. This evening I'm going to talk about something that we don't often talk directly about, but we need the reminder because we get caught up in our busy lives, our karmas, things happening, and we lose sight of the goal sometimes. Or maybe we lower the goal that we have. And what I'm going to talk about is moksha. It is the goal of all of life. Swami Kriyanandaji, I heard him over the years often say that one of the beautiful things and the unique things about the Hindu religion is that it set the goal of divine union with God as Satchidananda. That's how he defined moksha. And the sort of slightly lesser level of becoming jeevan mukta. And we might think, oh, this is too much for me. It's just too hard, too high. Maybe I'll just try to be a good person, do some meditation, and make some spiritual progress. But in fact, Yoganandaji told his disciples, his Kriya Yogi disciples, at a Kriya initiation, he once said, through the practice of Kriya Yoga, you should hope to become a Jivan Mukta in this lifetime. And he wasn't holding that out just for this one person or that one person. He was holding it out for everybody, as setting that as the goal. If you fail, that's fine. You've strived and achieved and will probably make great progress. But do set the bar very high like that. Now again, you might think, well, this is only for those who are exalted in some way, acharyas and, renunciates, this and that. It was interesting to note that Yoganandaji said several of his disciples received divine freedom, would achieve divine freedom in this lifetime. But what was interesting to see is that, I think with the exception of one, and that was Swami Kriyanandaji, none of them were the main, or even lesser acharyas in that organization. They were humble devotees. What they did have was deep yearning and devotion and deep guru attunement. And he pointed out this person and that who still had karmas to work out, who still had shortcomings. So it is achievable by anyone and everyone. It all depends simply on where we point the intensity and the direction and the focus of our hearts. Because again, moksha is not an idea, it's union with divine bliss. And very simply, one way to look at it, to distill it down, is to think that we're just simply taking the desires of our hearts and the attractions that we have and the loves that we have for the things of this world and turning it towards God. It's as simple as that. We're transferring it from one desire and attachment to another. And I think some people suddenly wake up one morning and realize these things that I've been putting all my desire to and attachment are not satisfying me. They're counterfeit. It's a little bit, in fact, like waking up one morning and finding that all of your 500 and 1,000 rupee notes are completely worthless. There's no value anymore to them. And it's like, what happened? And then you realize, oh, all I need to do is to transfer and trade these in for something that does have value. That's what renunciation is. People, and I'll greatly paraphrase one of the disciples of Lahiri Mahashai, renunciation is not renouncing anything. All you're doing is trading up from smaller desires and attachments to the desire and attachment to serve God, to love God, to give your life to God. And it's simply trading up from rupee notes that are worthless into something that has value. It really, the spiritual path could be condensed into that. And so it is achievable through Guru Seva, Guru Bhakti, meditation, Kriya Yoga. So don't ever discount the possibility that you can do it in this lifetime. I keep coming back to this one disciple of Master who he said would find freedom in this lifetime. He had a lot of strange karma to work out. Everything he did went wrong. He had what Master called commotion karma. And in fact, when he found Master, he found out where he lived in the desert, which was top secret, and he went out there to the desert, and Master saw him for the first time, and he recognized him for the soul from the past lifetime, and he said, you're not supposed to be with me in this lifetime. Isn't that strange? And he was saying, you don't have the karma to be with me in this lifetime. And of course, he looked more deeply, and he said, but because you have such intense devotion, it overcame that karma. And he was a disciple of Master for the rest of his life. So you can see it's not about karma. It's really about the direction of our hearts. For many years at Ananda Village, in America, it's a common practice to put on your refrigerator with a magnet something that you really want to remember and not forget. And it's usually, buy bread, buy milk, or something very mundane like that. But for about 15 years at Ananda Village, I put this saying of Master because I did not ever want to forget it, and we do forget it, this basic truth. He said, your job for now is to get to God. Don't worry about all the karma you will still have to complete. Let God worry about that. First, destroy in yourself the source of karmic involvement. That source is your attachment to the ego. Once the ego is merged in him, then any actions you perform will no longer revert to yourself. Your actions will be like writing on water. They will leave no trace in the mind. In severing yourself from egoic involvement in any action that you perform, you will have cut the Gordian knot of delusion. This is the state of the jeevan mukta, one who is free inside even while living in this world. Being inwardly free, nothing he does can ever affect him again. And so, how do we do this? There's a few ways I'll talk about. And I think we all struggle with our karmas, and that is what we seem to be dealing with day in and day out. And Krishna in Bhagavad Gita and Swamiji in his commentary on it explain how to get out of that delusion that we are our karmas and that we're limited by them. The Lord says, O Arjuna, as fire burns wood to ashes, so does the fire of wisdom burn to ashes all one's karma. And Swamiji writes, the ultimate way to escape the results of all karma is to evaporate the causative ego with its consciousness of identification with the little cup of the body. In deep meditation, that vapor of ego may rise and disappear altogether in the sky of infinite consciousness. If the dragon strikes and you are no longer there for it to seize you in its jaws, or if the rock falls from on high, but you have removed yourself from the spot where it falls, or if the fickle multitudes acclaim you and inevitably expose you later on to the dualistic opposite of public opprobrium, and you are not there to respond, what happens? The same actions occur, but they will not occur to you. And he goes on to say that he's describing the state of the jeevan mukta. So simply, it's to turn your attention from the little ego, the little self, to the divine self. And when those things happen, who will they happen to? Now, I've shared this before, but this passage here is actually a very personal advice that I honestly think Swamiji was thinking of me when he wrote this, because just a short time, a few years before he wrote the Bhagavad Gita commentaries, I was climbing a mountain, and I've shared this before, and this rock came down the mountain and hit me and smashed my leg, and I had to get airlifted by a helicopter off the mountain, and I should have died, honestly. And I told Swamiji this whole dramatic story. And a few years later, I was in Gurgaon when he was writing this book, and this is what he wrote about, if you have the karma to be hit by a rock from a precipice, stay away. And what he didn't know, maybe he knew actually, and why would he give this advice to me when he knew I must have learned my lesson? But about 3 years previous to this experience, I actually had another hair-raising mountain climbing experience where I was climbing with some very expert mountaineers up this glacier, steep, icy slope. We were all roped up together, and we had crampons and ice axe. And as we were climbing up, this big icy face of this peak just exploded with a huge resounding boom, came off of the mountain and started this huge avalanche. And it was right in front of us. This whole thing was happening. And purely by dumb luck, this avalanche totally buried the trail. If we had just been on about 30 seconds previously, it just completely buried it. So it was pure dumb luck. God was watching out for us. And I learned some deep mountaineering wisdom, because one of the mountaineers said, and I could tell they had said it before, they said, "We're not telling our wives about this, okay?" And deep mountaineering wisdom, but I think Swamiji saw that I really, really needed to learn this lesson. And in fact, I was out hiking with the monks last week. And a couple of them started climbing this rock wall, very steep, and gravel was starting to fall from one of them. And I just walked away and I said, "Om Guru, I'm not going near that precipice." Now, there's two ways you could take this advice that Swamiji gave. One is in the metaphysical sense, which is that if there's no ego, the karma may still come, and you happen to be under that precipice, the rock kills you, and who dies? You're just a jeevan mukta, you're in bliss. I don't think that's what he meant for me. I think he was meaning it in a more practical way, which was, he was saying, Devarshi, stay completely away from rock faces. And in a way, what I learned from that, because it's still on a metaphysical sense, I understood that the second time that happened, that I had this karma to die on a mountain. And I was on those mountains. I wasn't serving God, or it wasn't God's will that I be there. It was on some level of ego, even on a harmless level. It was some sense of ego gratification to climb mountains and be at these heights. And so I realized that if I give my life to God, and all my actions are given to the Lord, to service to the Guru, that's what I need to be focusing my life on, 100%, not 90% and 10% putting my life at risk. And when we do that, the Guru will protect us, even in dangerous situations. For example, driving in Delhi traffic, which is life-threatening from my own personal opinion. And I've had to do that many times, and I felt safe and sound, even though it's a form of putting yourself under a precipice, but it's always been doing God's will. So these are a couple of ways to dissolve this ego. Also realize that what Swamiji and Master are saying here is that the karma may still be there, but if we dissolve the ego, what happens is that the rope that's tying the karma to our ego, there's nothing to tie it to anymore. And so it doesn't hang on to us, it doesn't affect us, we become free of it. And that's the state of jeevan mukta. They still have karma to work out, but it no longer touches them. And this is why great saints can be in divine bliss no matter what is happening to them, what kind of persecution or suffering or whatever they're going through. Now, Swamiji also points something very interesting. He said that when someone attains that state of jeevan mukta, he said that 7 generations of their family, before and after, become free. And it's such an interesting statement. Yoganandaji said this. And Swamiji interpreted that as saying they don't become fully liberated themselves, otherwise another 7 generations going forward and back, and will go on to infinity. But one time Dr. Lewis asked him, "What about the disciples then? I mean, this is just the family." And Master answered, "The disciples come first." And so this is a reason to be hanging out with potential jeevan muktas, in a way. I honestly think that a lot of inner freedom that a lot of Ananda people have developed since Swami Kriyanandaji's passing is because he achieved that state. And Swamiji said, when you achieve that state for the first lifetime, it's much, much more than 7 generations. There's a great deal of spiritual wealth that's shared with people. Another way of looking at it that is humorous, but I think it's actually true. When we die and go to heaven, or wherever we go, all we have to do is point to Yoganandaji and say, "I'm with him. I'm with that guy. I'm with those guys. I'm with the Yogananda party," if you want to use a restaurant analogy. And that is the tie that we have with the great masters. Again, don't limit yourself by, "Oh, I'm raising a family and I'm not like these other disciples." There are no limitations. It's all purely of the heart. And attunement, Guru Seva, Guru Bhakti, meditation. I'll just talk about a couple more ways of working with this, which is one, Swamiji says, the state of jeevan mukta, which Master said we should all aspire to, comes when we reach the point of total inner self-offering. You've got to practice these things now. The state of jeevan mukta is realizing that you don't do anything. You've given your ego to him, and you know that he does everything through you. I have a friend at Ananda Village, one of our Kriyacharyas, Dr. Peter Van Houten, and he told me once that one year, his New Year's resolution was that he was going to act that year like a jeevan mukta. And it was really so sweet because he was admitting that he was not a jeevan mukta, but he was saying that everything he did, he would say, what would a jeevan mukta do in this situation? And I can say that because he runs this huge medical clinic and is utterly selfless in giving himself to service to God and giving his ego to God and everything, that he is becoming a jeevan mukta. But more importantly, he has a great deal of inner freedom while he's pretending to be a jeevan mukta. So put that cloak of jeevan mukta on and try it on for a while and say, okay, I'm going to live like a jeevan mukta would for a while. Let's see just how it feels. And you'll see it's not necessarily changing what you do outwardly, but the focus of your heart. It's also very helpful to understand that this life is a dream. And this is a personal way that I found very helpful over the years. Yoganandaji wrote a beautiful chant in which he says, O life is sweet and death a dream when thy song flows through me. O praise is sweet and blame a dream when thy song flows through me. All sickness a dream and all health is sweet and sickness a dream when thy song flows through me. And this is a very good way to live life, is one, to understand that it's a dream, but it's not just a dream, because this dream gets very crazy sometimes, but it's God's dream. And we're in God's dream, and we are in the lap of God, of Divine Mother, living this dream. For those of us who are Americans, we've had this big election these last couple of days, and it's become a very surreal dream for those of us who know America to see this guy, I won't name him, get elected. It's truly surreal. And even some Ananda people, many I think, are disturbed by it. And I've seen them post on Facebook, oh, how can this happen, and this and that. And someone posted, it's all in God's hands. And it's one of the devotees at Ananda who is, again, not a great acharya, but just a very simple devotee who understood that this is God's dream. When we can see the ups and downs and the dramas and just the strange things, but also when these things happen to ourselves. Because, of course, it's easier when we see it happening to someone else or across the ocean in America. But when things happen to ourselves, it's a little bit harder to see it as a dream. And the most helpful thing that I have found in this regard is try to be more impersonal with myself, meaning that when I look at myself in the mirror, or when I have an idea or a thought or an emotion, don't get too attached to it. Even if you have a good idea, it came from God, and it came from the Guru, and it's not ours. And if we have a bad idea, don't get too caught up in that. It's just give it all to God and treat yourself with less personal attachment. And you'll find that it's very easy to see all life as this beautiful dream in God. And that inner freedom we can have even now if we just change the focus of our mind and the focus of our heart. So let's keep that goal of moksha always before us. Let's practice what we can every day to keep going in that direction. And you'll find that even now, in this moment, you can be very, very inwardly free through this simple practice and awareness. So may the Gurus and Divine Mother bless our efforts, bless our lives, and add that most important ingredient of all, which is divine grace, to help us along this way. Om Shanti Shanti.